Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. Base Realignment and Closure, BRAC, is a process by a United States federal government commission to increase United States Department of Defense efficiency by planning end of Cold War realignment and closure of military installations. More than 350 installations have been closed in 5 BRAC rounds: 1989, 91, 93, 95, and 2005. The 2005 Commission recommended that Congress authorize another BRAC round in 2015 and then every 8 years thereafter. Now, on May the 10th, 2012, last year, the House Armed Services Committee rejected Pentagon calls for base closures outside of the 2015 round by a 44-18 vote. Our guest today, Krohne, Executive Director of the Leadership Council Southwestern Illinois, does not want Scott Air Force Base to be included in the next round of base closings. Since 2005, Scott Air Force Base, located in St. Louis Metro East, has been one of the largest employers in the St. Louis metropolitan region. Today, Ms. Krohne and I will be discussing why Scott should remain open and what the consequences of closure will mean to the entire St. Louis region. Krohne, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you very much for having me, Lee.
How long have you been working on this Keeping Scott Air Force Base Open organization?
Well, I've been with the Leadership Council just 16 months, but the Leadership Council has been, this is our 30th year anniversary, so the Leadership Council has been around for a long time, and they've had a very strong influence and been working with the Scott Air Force Base, avoiding any kind of negative actions at Scott due to a BRAC in the 95 efforts and again in the 2005 efforts, and we're doing that same kind of effort in the what we believe is ahead.
Congressman Costello, Jerry Costello, who's now former Congressman Costello, represented the area where Scott Air Force Base is located. And to be specific, they are in Illinois, off of Interstate 64 near Shiloh. Between
Shiloh and Muscuda, yes, in St. Clair County. Yeah.
Right. And it's a fairly, I mean, it's not like a huge base, but it's a fairly large base, and it is also adjacent to that new airport as well. Matter of fact, that airport is actually dual use. Part Air Force, part civilian, correct?
That's correct. Mid-America is a joint use air base, or joint use airport, and there's 3,000 acres at Scott Air Force Base.
Right. Yeah. And so Jerry Costello, as congressman, was able to defend Scott Air Force Base and keep it off those BRAC lists. But now he's former congressman, but I understand you've also enlisted his help as well.
Right, we formed a task force. The Scott Air Force Base Task Force was formed this year in May. It includes Madison County, St. Clair County, and the Leadership Council. So there's a tri-chair of the task force. Frank Miles for Madison County, Terry Beach for St. Clair County, and I'm the representative from the Leadership Council. The task force's efforts are to help to continue the growth at Scott Air Force Base. So not just to defend in the case of a BRAC, but also to continue the growth. The base has grown 45% in the last decade since the last BRAC, and we want to continue that growth at Scott Air Force Base. So the task force was formed. We've just recently announced the hiring of a team of consultants that are going to help us with those efforts. Former Congressman Jerry Costello, as you pointed out, a retired General Duncan McNabb, and a government relations firm from Washington, D.C., Smith Dawson Andrews.
McNabb, I'm trying to remember what his qualifications were as an active duty officer.
He spent 37 years in the Air Force. He was the commander of TRANSCOM at Scott Air Force Base and is one of the leading experts in the military, Air Force, and in general the military, and where the military is going in the future. So we think he brings just a wonderful skill set to the task force. And since he was stationed at Scott, he also has, just as Congressman Costello does, a love for Scott Air Force Base and a desire to help keep it open.
Full disclosure, I too was stationed as a naval officer at Scott Air Force Base at United States Transportation Command. I arrived there just several weeks after Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait back in August 1990. And at that time, United States Transportation Command, called TRANSCOM, had just been established there, and we had to scramble to get ready to run the transportation side of that particular war, Desert Shield and Desert Storm. TRANSCOM is a very, very important unified command to the entire military structure of the United States military services. There are several other very important commands that are at Scott Air Force Base, and to me, the main reason for having a military base is for what the military is doing, but I understand that your organization is concerned with employment as opposed to military usage. Am I reading that correctly?
Well, the Scott Air Force Base brings $3.2 billion of economic impact to the St. Louis region. It's the largest employer by far in Southwestern Illinois and the fourth largest employer in St. Louis. So, our concern is we want to continue the growth of Scott Air Force Base and that economic impact in the region. So we know that their missions are very critical, and that what they do there is very important to national defense, and that's, I think, important for all of us as citizens. Our concern is more aimed at making sure that the economic impact of the base continues to grow and move in the right direction.
So, okay, tell us more about what Scott does for the St. Louis region and what you hope to continue there.
Well, as we said, it's a $3.2 billion economic engine on a yearly basis. There are 136,000 people that their lives are impacted by either direct employment, or they're a retiree of the military, or they're a dependent of someone that works at Scott. So it's got a lot of impact to the people in the region. And a lot of businesses are dependent on the people that are out at Scott Air Force Base, or they're a contractor that supports Scott Air Force Base. So all of that impact across Southwestern Illinois and the St. Louis region, we want to make sure that continues to grow. So that's our primary purpose in working with the task force, is to make sure that happens.
And as I mentioned earlier, I mean, Scott has some pretty important commands there. What is it that your organization has heard that would lead you to believe that higher command authority would be wanting to close that base?
Well, I don't think we've ever heard that someone wants to close Scott Air Force Base. That's really not, we haven't been hearing that.
Okay.
But we feel it's important to be diligent and in front of anything that could be taken from Scott, anything that could be moved to another base, for example. So it's more looking at what are the strengths of the base and what are the opportunities to bring more things here as they start a BRAC process, for example, and start consolidating bases. Part of the reason Scott grew in the last decade by 45% is that other things came to Scott, other things that were closed,
other bases that closed.
Other things that closed, they saw an opportunity to come to Scott. And Scott has some just, and not just me, but I think the task force in general agrees that there are some very good strengths at Scott Air Force Base that makes that a rational thing to do, to expand at Scott Air Force Base instead of some other bases. You mentioned one, which is it's already a joint use command, right?
Yes.
So there are 9 unified commands there. That's the model the military is moving to have joint use, and Scott is a model for that in the nation. So they've already got that structure where all the forces work well together, including the Guard and the Reserve and the active duty, and I think that's an important element there. It has critical missions, as you mentioned, so the things that happen there, like TRANSCOM and AMC and some of the security pieces that are there, are mission critical to the military in the U.S. So the importance of Scott Air Force Base is, I think, well recognized. It's unencroached, so the land around Scott Air Force Base, the cities and the counties have done a great job of land use planning. So there isn't something right up next to the base that keeps it from growing or keeps it from accepting a new mission.
In the old days, they would say middle of nowhere.
It's true. It is in the middle, kind of in the middle of nowhere, but that's a
Which is
fabulous
good.
thing for
Which is
a
good.
military base, and especially with some of the secure commands that are there.
Yeah.
Being out in the middle of nowhere is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, you don't get onto that base anymore. I mean, there was a time that anybody could just drive in, sign in, and go on the base. But now, I understand. Well, you probably have been there since I have. So, tell us a little bit about how tight the security was that you found.
Yeah, well, I remember the same thing as a young girl. You just drove through the base. It really was easy to access the base, and you kind of went through it, as you came from Mascoutah. But now, you have to be registered. They have to know all of your information. I'm imagining they do a security check or some kind of check because you have to inform them that you're coming, so they give you clearance to enter the base. It's very, very tightly controlled, which is the right thing for the kind of missions that are there.
Do you have to get out of the car?
I have a card now, so.
Now, when do you hand it to the guy?
Oh,
and he
yeah,
takes,
and then they
he
take
actually
it.
physically takes it from you and looks
Yes,
at it.
and he checks
It's not
it
like
out.
the
It's
old
got my
days where
picture on it.
You just flash that card up there as you're driving by. Yeah, go on through. No, that's a very, very secure base.
It's a very secure base, and that is important. It's important that they have it that way.
Because they don't want criminals coming on board and doing anything that would damage property or personnel there.
Absolutely. Just a couple of the other things that I think are strengths for Scott Air Force Base. The location. It's like they say in real estate, location. It's in the middle of the country. We have a fabulous infrastructure all around us, rail, river, the interstate systems, the airports. We have what they need from a logistics perspective so they can be efficient there. There's room to expand at the base. It's 3,000 acres, but the county also controls acres around the base, so there's plenty of room to grow and do more at the base. It offers a great value. So the middle of the country, the housing prices and the cost of living in St. Louis compared to many other places that the military operates allows the base to operate efficiently, but it also allows the airmen to have a good quality standard of living and a good support there. And lastly, I'd say the support from the communities is really important for Scott Air Force Base, and the St. Louis region, it's in southwestern Illinois, shows very strong support for the airmen and for the base. It's kind of the part of our fabric of our culture here, and it's something that I think we really honor and respect and appreciate in southwestern Illinois.
Now tell us about two different things. One, there is some sort of a program where businesses can say that we support. Talk about that one first.
I was hoping you'd ask about that. Okay. So the Leadership Council has launched, along with our Chamber of Commerce organizations around the base, have launched a program we call Scott Patriots Program. And the Scott Patriots Program is open to any business or community or organization that does something to help support the airmen at Scott Air Force Base. And there's one of 10 ways that you can sign up to be a Scott Patriot. There's no cost. You go on a website, www.scottpatriot.com, and you answer a very short questionnaire. You put your website, and then we enter that into the Scott Patriot website, and we have your link there so that the airmen know what businesses are military friendly, and they can go in and sort by category. All the hairdressers, restaurants, whatever that gives either a discount or hires a veteran, so that they can know that business is military friendly. We did the program because we know that there are so many organizations in southwestern Illinois and the St. Louis region that support Scott Air Force Base, and we just wanted to find a way to recognize that and to let the airmen know which of those businesses were military friendly. Once you sign up, we send you a little decal. I have one here with me.
Go ahead.
You get this little decal that's the Scott Patriot. You put it in your window, and a certificate for your wall. And I also have a brochure. This is the Scott Patriot logo. And I'll give it to you. You can sign up for Charter Communications because I know you support Scott Air Force Base.
Well, we'll put that right there for now.
Okay.
So that's the Scott Patriot program. Mm-hmm. And have you had a lot of success with this
We have
response?
over 300 businesses already that have signed up to be Scott Patriots, and we're working hard to get lots more. One of the things that we're hoping for the Scott Patriot program is to use it in our Abilene Award application.
That was the next thing I was going to ask you about, is this, I heard about this Abilene Award, which used to be called something else, but just tell people what this is and why Scott won.
So the Abilene Award is an award that they give, that the Abilene, Texas Chamber of Commerce gives to recognize the air base that best supports their airmen and women at the base. And so the St. Louis region is what we applied for. The Leadership Council, along with the Bell Scott Committee, supported getting an application in 2013, and it was about the support for the airmen at Scott. And we had over 275 examples of support, all different kind of things from free tickets to the Rams games to baby showers that were thrown for expected spouses and for expected military, to dinners that were held, and book sales, and all kinds of support and show of love for the airmen at the Scott Air Force Base. And this was the first year we have won the award, and the base was just thrilled that we were able to be recognized as the Abilene Award winner.
And this is a pretty prestigious award within the military, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. It's one that I think every command cherishes winning the Abilene Award, and they were really excited about it.
Mm-hmm. And so you think that added into all these other things, the Patriot program, will impress those who are making decisions as to whether or not a base should be or shouldn't be closed?
Support for the airmen and the base within the local community is a very important category, and when they consider what bases in a BRAC process, it's a very important category. Is there good support, local support for the base in the region? And I think we could put the support and the love of the airmen at Scott Air Force Base up against any other base in the nation, and be very proud of the fact that all of our local businesses and organizations just provide so much support for Scott. Mm-hmm. It's just one of the factors. I mean, there's lots of other things that they look at in those the criteria. Is there good housing? Is there good education? Is there employment for the spouses? Is there good health care? And Southwestern Illinois really shines in all of those. The housing around the base has been dramatically improved in the last couple of decades. We have wonderful health care, and even we'll have more availability of health care with Memorial's new hospital that they're building, and potentially St. Elizabeth's. Our education system here is wonderful. The Mascoutah School District, where most of the Scott Air Force Base children attend, is very well recognized as an excellent school, and we have all of the educational capabilities in SIUE and the community colleges and the community or the universities across the river. There's lots of ability for continuing education at Scott Air Force Base. Lindenwood has a campus, McKendree has a campus there. So there's lots of ability to access education, and there's a good level of employment for spouses that are there at the base.
There's 3 congressmen that represent in the St. Louis Metro
Mm-hmm.
East. I'm sure that all 3 of them have signed on to protecting Scott. I'm curious, what about the congressmen who represent right across the river in Missouri? Have they, what's their position?
We have, I think, been very blessed with support for Scott Air Force Base. Our congressional delegation is very, very supportive. Our regional partners in St. Louis, like the St. Louis Regional Chamber, Regional Business Council, they're very supportive and have been in past BRACs and are being very supportive as we move forward, as is the Missouri congressional delegation. I think they understand the importance of Scott Air Force Base to the region, and so we've experienced very strong bi-state support for Scott Air Force Base.
So that must mean that there is benefit in Missouri for the positioning of Scott Air Force Base, an economic benefit for the St. Louis
Absolutely,
area,
yes,
the Missouri side.
There is. So there's a lot of contract work that's done at Scott Air Force Base, and 50% of that contract work is actually Missouri contractors, not Illinois contractors. And many of the retirees and others that work at Scott Air Force Base, some of them live in Missouri. So there is I think they recognize there's a strong connection between Scott Air Force Base and the St. Louis regional economy.
Mm-hmm. Without getting into private secrets or whatever, what is former Congressman Costello and General McNabb saying to you?
Well, the first thing that we've been talking about, and they were here last week for our first round of meetings, the first thing we're talking about is looking at what are the strengths and weaknesses of the base. what are the things that we need to make sure we shore up? What are the things that maybe aren't as good as they could be? And we're going to work on each one of those and knock them down so that we can have everything in order. And then what are the strengths of Scott Air Force Base? And we just talked about many of those. And how can we use those strengths to bring opportunity to Scott Air Force Base? And the wonderful thing of both of them is they are so knowledgeable about Scott Air Force Base, and they're so knowledgeable about the process and the military and how this works that we don't have to, there's no ramp up time. They're hitting the ground running for us, and that was, we feel really blessed that they were able to join our team.
Well, I would think that a former Transcom commander and a former congressman from the area would be up to speed. Costello hasn't been gone that
No.
long, just a matter of months. I just wanted to, for the benefit of the audience, just go over just some of the important commands that are at Scott Air Force Base. We need these. United States Transportation Command, otherwise known as U.S. Transcom, is important because it is a unified command that controls all transportation assets worldwide. So including like when you have an airman, Navy, Army guy, when they're moving from one command to another, just individually, their family, that whole PCS move is controlled through a command there at Scott Air Force Base. The Air Mobility Command, for those who don't recognize it, people might remember Military Airlift Command, MAC, and then there was Strategic Air Command. Those are the guys that used to fly those planes out to the border of the Soviet Union. And then there was something called TAC, the Tactical Air Command. And all of those got put together into what is now called Air Mobility Command. The 18th Air Force, well, they're warfighters. Logistics Support Center, Air Force Global Logistics Support Center, they do just that. They're in charge of moving material around. Then there's some other agencies that actually have communications, although in this day and age, apparently some people are upset with the ability of our government to be able to listen in on the enemy. But so there's a whole lot of stuff that goes on out at Scott, which is why you have to be signed in correctly, and they have to know who you are before you get there.
Yeah, there are, as you mentioned, all of those missions, and they're critical missions to the defense of the country.
Weather Command, they've got a Weather Command there. They also have, as part of the Air Force, they actually fly hospital missions, and so they can go and pick people up and move them to hospitals. That's what they do. As a matter of fact, in the old days, if they had extra space available, you could actually hitch a ride so that you could go from here to there, wherever they were going, and that was pretty cool too.
That would be very cool
to be able to catch those rides.
One of the interesting ones, and I didn't know much about what was at Scott behind the walls before I took this role, but one of the interesting ones is the refueling, the tankers that are there that refuel in air, and the way that they do that is just, to me, incredible, that they can actually be flying and refuel, and that's really what is the foundation of our Air Force strength, is the ability to have that refueling missions across the world.
The Soviets never could perfect that. That's one of the they never could perfect that, and that was one of the reasons that the American Air Force was just so much superior to the Soviet Air Force. We got about 4 or 5 minutes left here. If there are areas yet uncovered, let's cover them now before we run out of time.
Okay. Well, again, I think the most important message is that Scott Air Force Base is a very important part of the St. Louis regional economy. We are working hard with our task force to make sure it stays that way. We are blessed, I think, because we have in Southwestern Illinois so many people that are willing to invest in that endeavor. The Leadership Council has an investment campaign underway, and we're asking our members and other members of the communities in St. Louis and Southwestern Illinois to help donate to that investment campaign so that we'll be able to make this work and go forward and make sure that we are successful as we were in the last two BRAC rounds. So for anyone that's willing to invest, we appreciate that, and of course they can get in touch with me if they would like to do so.
And we've had some contact information up on the screen that people can go to your website as well. And what is that website?
www.leadershipcouncilswil.com.
Right, and they can go there and get more information.
Absolutely.
There.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's really weird. I mean, it really is. Like when I was doing the introduction of you and we were talking about BRAC as to what BRAC is, but it's like post-Cold War. Well, Cold War ended before many of the young people that I know were even born.
That's right.
I mean, we're talking 89, 91 time frame is when and still I looked up BRAC in preparation for this discussion. And I was very surprised to see they're still talking about, winding things down from the Cold War. And it's like, what? I mean, 2015 is, like a third of a century away from that activity. And then 8 years forward, when we're in 2023, that's way out there. And so they need a better excuse.
Maybe so. But I think the military is moving forward. They're looking at ways to be more cost efficient and effective, and our task force is going to make sure that we look at everything we can do to help them to be that.
Well, by way of editorial comment, this is me talking, not your organization talking. The United States military is the most effective military in the world, but we are losing a certain amount of our capability as we keep pulling resources away from it. It would be a terrible mistake, in my opinion, not because I live in the St. Louis region to talk about removing Scott from active service, but it would be a terrible thing because we are cutting away at military muscle, the ability to actually warfight. And like I alluded to originally, as a former military guy, I'm less concerned about those business interests and all the monies that are circulating, tax monies that are going into people's pockets, as opposed to the ability of the United States military to actually be able to deliver a punch when it needs to.
I think we have to, there's a lot of balancing there that needs to occur over the next decade. Secretary Hagel said it's $1 trillion, $500 billion that's already out of the budgets, and another $500 billion for sequester. It's almost a number I can't fathom, $1 trillion that they're going to reduce. How they do that, is something that they'll need to work through. We just want to make sure that Scott Air Force Base and all of the critical missions that it has there continues to grow. And that's really the focus of the task force with Madison and St. Clair County and the Leadership Council.
Thank you very much for coming and explaining the position of the Leadership Council. Very much appreciated.
Thank you, Lee. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. And to my audience, I've been speaking with Ellen Krohne. She is with the Southwestern Illinois Leadership Council. They are working a project right now to keep Scott Air Force Base from being put on a list of closed bases in 2015. For those of you who saw this show and want to show it to your friends, this program is going to be uploaded to YouTube. So go to YouTube and you can show it to them. Thanks. Next time.